I call the June meeting of the Atherton Rail Committee to order. I think a roll call is first. If I can get the roll call, please.
Chair Key,
Yep.
Vice Chair Mobek,
Here.
Jack Ringham, Greg Conlon, Paul Jones here, Jim Jans, James Massey here. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Public comments. Are there any members online? I don't think so. No, okay. Moving on to approval of minutes. Okay, if there are no comments, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Hearing none. Minutes have been approved as submitted. No presentations and the regular agenda. Mr. Ovadia?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. So item 5A is a brief update on the Atherton Station remodel project. As we advised at the previous meeting, the town has hired an architect to help us with the design for the Atherton Station remodel. They have developed a conceptual layout, which was reviewed by the subcommittee with some comments. And so we're working to move forward from there. So the project is currently on track. Primary components include rehabilitation of the building. There's various items on the building that have various deferred maintenance items that need to be addressed, including dry rot and various other items. So that's part of the project. We'll be closing off the side facing the rail tracks and putting in an entry door on that side, as well as an entry door on the town side, on the town center side, with a center case display for artifacts and other things related to rail, as well as a video monitor on one end and some fixed displays on the other side, benches and a couple other things outside. So that's, like I said, that's moving forward at this point in time.
Okay. Any questions from the committee?
This layout, is it available for us to look at? I mean, I don't imagine it's terribly different from what's here now, but we get questions from neighbors and things. What's happening to the state?
So not too much. It's not available to the public yet. It's still a working product. And as that gets flushed out, it's going to be brought forward to the council. And at that point, we'll have something public to share.
Is there a planned time to start to do the work, or you haven't even gone to contract this curious? I'm just
No,
curious.
right now we're just in the design stage.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I think there was some submission from the subcommittee on some mock-ups.
Yeah, there was a mock-up that was done in advance of releasing the request for proposals. It's fairly similar to that, except for at this point, I think the one substantive change is entry and exit kind of centered in the middle of the building. And so a pass-through in essence on that.
Do we have an opportunity to comment, recommend anything, or is it strictly in the hands of Rick and Diane, whoever the subcommittee?
So right now it's in the hands of the subcommittee providing feedback to staff in terms of the process. Ultimately, it's going to be coming before the council. And if they choose to delegate things down to the down to the rail committee, that'll be their option.
But we can always comment as members of the public when it comes
Well,
back.
sure.
Go ahead.
I have a related question. What is the status of Rosemary Malbeck's plaque? That's related to the station, and
It is. And so the intent is to, I think the direction is to bring it forward to the council for placement with the remodel of the building.
thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the committee? Okay, move on to the 5B Watkins safety improvements.
So Caltrain has been moving forward with the design. Plans are calling basically 100% completed. You have a copy that was attached to the agenda package of what the improvements include. So we have the 4-quadrant gates, some pedestrian crossing improvements because of the shifting of gates and the pedestrian access. So there's going to be some adjustment to the pedestrian crossing of the tracks on the south side. Additional signage, pavement markings, as well as some pedestrian scale lighting at the crossing. And
You mean like lights on the bottom, something like that?
no, so these will be like, 14 or 15-foot high lights,
Okay.
kind of similar to what, I'm going to say the style is similar to these and similar to what's in the Lloyden Park neighborhood.
Oh, you mean like streetlights?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
So, but not like 30-foot tall, just
Like bright lights shining into homes.
no. So
good.
those, and I think we were talking with them about shielding them. So there's one resident that lives right there at the
Corner, yeah.
corner. So we just want to make sure that that's shielded.
Good.
But it's intended to provide lighting so that cars can see people crossing.
Okay, that's good.
And then the other item that Caltrain has started putting in is kind of some lighted pavement markers on the edges of the travelway so that cars can see an edge line at night better.
Any questions from the committee?
Sounds like good progress.
I had one question about, looks like one of the pedestrian gates was moving from one side to, well, kind of.
They are shifting.
They are, yeah.
And so right now, what we have is the same post
Mhm.
has both a pedestrian, has both a vehicle arm and a ped arm.
Yeah.
And so the current regs are that they need to be separated.
Okay,
And
so there's a new
so-
regulation. That's why they, okay.
Yeah,
Because
so
it seemed
they
like
are-
an extra cost, like why are they doing this?
I'm
Okay,
going to say extra cost is not something that is necessarily desired, but it is something that is required. So they have to separate
okay,
the pedestrian gate from the vehicle gate.
okay. And there, looks like they're also moving kind of the utility road, short road to being on up Station
It'll
Lane.
be
rather than-
accessed from Station Lane. I think
Yes.
we talked about that at the previous meeting. So
Okay. And then was there an estimate on how much they think it's going to cost?
we haven't seen that yet,
Okay,
but I'm going to say my assumption it's well within the budget that was allocated.
yeah, the
for
5 million
project.
budget, but I'm just curious what it is, but I guess we'll find out when it goes out to bid.
Yeah, so I think I have a meeting with them next week to kind of go over any comments that we have.
Okay,
But their intent, their schedule had called for basically construction the beginning of the year. So once it finalizes through this, they have their specification package and legal review that they'll be doing with the intent of going out to bid later this year and starting construction the beginning of next year.
okay, thank you. No other comments? Okay, well, we move on to 5C, Caltrain update.
Okay, 5C, Caltrain update. So I don't have much of an update other than they are actively working in the corridor here in town. A lot of work related to signal and putting in conduits and other items. And so during the day while they're working, I'm sure, John, you're hearing the horn noises here near the Fair Oaks Lane crossing. And that's because when people are around working, they're honking, the trains are honking their horns.
Pretty intense the last couple of weeks. I mean.
Yeah, no, they've been
they
actively
put
working.
More cars in front of that block than the construction of this place did.
Yeah, you're
Oh, those are
Yeah.
Caltrain?
Yeah. the
Oh,
recent
wow.
one,
Yeah,
the
Balfour
recent
Beatty,
one.
Okay.
Balfour Beatty over the last couple of weeks have been actively working here.
Yeah.
Okay, I was like
Um,
wondering what all those cars were.
Yeah, well, I didn't see much today, so maybe they're,
They were here today, and I'm going to say they're also working at the Watkins crossing as well. And so they are actively working.
They travel in large groups. I've seen that all the way up the peninsula.
Yes, yes.
So, and then I think something that we shared last time, the preliminary report from the San Bruno accident was released. I don't know whether we just want to call it really poor miscommunication about track usage and clearance, which is really unfortunate. But the NTSB is continuing their investigation to finalize that.
The only other comment I wanted to make about it, it's the preliminary report didn't have anything about how the PTC, which is supposed to stop these types of intrusions, whether it failed or it didn't fail or what exactly happened, because positive train control is supposed to stop any of these crashes from happening. So
I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait for the.
yeah,
final
we'll have to wait for
report
the
come
full
out.
report. So the preliminary
But
report didn't say
when,
anything about
I
it.
mean, they called in saying that the track was in use. Somebody followed up with a track
They
clear,
released it, yeah. So-
and it wasn't. So
Okay, any comments or questions on 5C? If not, we'll move on to 5B, HSR.
So high-speed rail. So there were a variety of articles that were published over the last couple of months. Those were sent out to you separately via email, but included with the staff report. A lot of it related to progress on the lines, disputes or discussions related to financing. So we will see what happens with the state budget in terms of allocations as that gets through its approval process. And then beginning of this month, it appears that there is a lawsuit that's being filed by Millbrae with regards to property there near the proposed station. They have development that they are approving and need a piece of land. I think that they're trying to acquire through eminent domain or some other action so that they can realign the adjacent roadway. And so that property is needed for the station. And so that is something that Millbrae is either negotiating or litigating with high-speed rail as that process moves forward. And then the biggest item is, I think on Friday, high-speed rail released the final EIS for the San Francisco to San Jose corridor. As part of that, they're supposed to provide responses to all of the comments that people have submitted on the draft EIR and EIS. Included in the myriad of documents are the responses to local agency comments, which includes ours. They acknowledge them, but as far as actually changing the EIR, EIS, there was only one substantive change that I noticed, and that was the extension of the proposed sound wall along the park. And so it had originally terminated in their preliminary layout just past the tennis courts coming from the south, and now they're going to bring it up closer to Watkins. But the other comments that we had about extending the sound wall through this area here because of the library and other things, and the single family homes on the other side of the tracks, they didn't address, though they provided responses related to emergency response for fire stations. They didn't really address police, which is our main concern, given that our main access is next to Fair Oaks. So that's what I have on it. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to review the comments or response to our comment letter.
So I'll open it up if we have any questions or comments.
I'm just still curious, as I get it from reading these articles, environmental issues aside, and they still are not making any headway in the Central Valley, and they don't have any money. And it just sort of keeps grinding on. And am I correct in that,
Say they are proceeding. They do have some challenges in terms of finances. I think in the business plan that we reviewed, there was a substantial gap in funding. They are actively seeking funding from various sources, including the federal government.
We got $97 billion surplus. Why don't we just give it to high-speed rail?
Ugh.
Well, I'll say that there is some dialogue going on between the legislature and the governor when it comes to allocating.
There are
Um,
competing
I'll
needs.
So,
Actually,
I get a
am.
kick out of it because they're not selling the train as the play to get back and forth, whatever the original thing. In the valley, they're selling housing and jobs is why we got to spend the money. They're not talking about the rails, they're talking about the housing and the number of jobs they're creating for the community. It's just crazy. I used to
That's
own some
what
ranches
they've
over
been
there, so
doing since the very beginning.
Yeah.
And their strongest supporters have been the building trade unions.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And they marched in lockstep, just yay raw, high-speed rail.
Yeah.
And as yet, they haven't laid a rail.
No. And the rails they're going to lay aren't for high speed anyway. They're not going to be able to handle the heavy, high-speed trains.
The high-speed trains are actually lighter weight.
Yeah.
than the conventional.
I'll tell you guys the thing, like I said, I used to own ranches over there. So I was a cocktail party. I remember this a number of years ago, overload. And these guys were just laughing, these farmers guys that I knew, they're going, I can hardly wait to get into my pickup and drive to Madera so I get on the train and ride to Bakersfield. Oh my God, I'm so excited. The whole cocktail party was just breaking up.
I am interested in finding out what happens between I know the assembly members in Los Angeles want to spend more of the rail money locally. And I'm curious to see in the budget negotiations what happens, because I know Newsom wants to spend it in.
If
the
you know
central
LA,
valley.
where are they going to spend the money and where are they going to route this train? Are they going to route it down the 405, right down through LA, down Orange County and,
Well,
that way?
the money they want to spend is more geared toward their local train service and
Oh, yeah. of
quote
course.
unquote
Oh, yeah.
preparation of the high-speed rail.
Well, they'll
coming.
call it high speed. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
they're not.
just like Caltrain spent
I'm
it
just
here.
saying on the plan, how do you think they're gonna do this
Yeah.
down there? Plus, the tunneling through the Tehachapi Mountains, which is totally unknown geological area, they have no idea how much it's gonna cost or how they're even gonna do it.
Yeah.
And that was all, it's just. Sorry.
It's
to
only
go-
35 miles of tunnel there. That's
Yeah.
just a minor problem.
Yeah, just a minor problem, an unknown geology.
Yes.
I thought Musk had that sorted out with that special system.
The boring tunnel.
Sorry.
I think we
so-
can hold our breath. The
Go ahead,
community
Paul.
working group on high-speed rail will be meeting later this month, and I'll be attending that meeting there.
Okay,
We'll get the current party line. I'm not sure that we'll get anything useful out of it.
okay.
Yeah.
Did any committee members want to review the final EIR and the responses? And I don't know if there's anything actionable, if what typically I'll have to defer to staff if there's anything typically that a local agency could do once it sees the final EIR, whether it comments back or
like I say,
something
we
else.
could comment back if there was something really dramatic
Okay,
in terms of impact, but the reality is that it's gonna get, I mean, the board will approve it.
The board will vote on it in their August meeting.
Yeah.
It'll just be a rubber stamp.
okay,
Yeah, I agree. Well, yeah.
okay. So I take it a consensus from the committee.
Yeah.
There's not much other than we'll just take a look at it and just keep it under advisement, but there's probably no action that will be any effect that will proceed.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, we've reviewed these things
Yeah.
repeatedly, the business plans, the
Mhm.
EIRs.
Yep.
And, we work pretty hard on it.
Yeah.
We send it over to the council and then they pretty much take what we give them, but I think they spend some time looking at it and thinking about it and tweaking it maybe.
Over
And
there.
it never, well, I mean, Bob does most of the work, obviously,
Robert
but
does most of the work.
but
Yeah.
hardly anything ever happens.
Well, I'm gonna say that, I'm gonna say the one change that they did note was that extension of that sound wall. The problem that we have is they have what they term their cost benefit in terms of what that threshold of mitigation is. We don't necessarily agree with what that threshold is, but they, like for noise and that kind of mitigation, to put in a sound wall or extend a sound wall, they have a minimum number of receptors within a certain distance. And when you are densely populated, you're going to hit that trigger and they'll put it in. If you are lower density, you don't have as many people within that distance. And so for them, their response was, we're not going to build a sound wall, but maybe it can be addressed with insulation or, like the airport does with window replacements and that kind of thing, as opposed to a sound wall, which may or may not be cheaper.
Well, we should have submitted our housing element study before. Well, the council should have heard this one. Okay,
So
if there are no other comments, we'll move on to 5F. Or there's no 5F, so
5E.
5E, neighboring jurisdictions. I think this one is mine. So was it here? The Menlo Park is going to award a contract for a consultant to develop a quiet zone implementation plan. I think I gave you guys an update on this 3 months ago. This month, they're supposed to do that. I'm not sure if it will occur this month, but I hadn't seen it done in May, so they were thinking May, June. But once they do that, they'll have a quiet zone implementation plan for their 4 tracks and possibly Palo Alto Avenue too. And because they want to have a quiet zone, and if they implement one, they could tack it onto ours on Watkins and then have a long continuous quiet zone that will actually happen to benefit Atherton, because Atherton kind of bends into Menlo Park a bit. So you can say the sound cone hits Atherton residents too within Menlo Park. So that would be a good thing. So I'll keep monitoring that, but they should be approving this consultant because it's on their budget for I think this coming fiscal year or in fact this fiscal year. Yeah. That's all I had. Any questions, comments? Okay. Well, let me move on to number 6.
Okay, so I just have a brief item related to the rail committee. The council tomorrow night will be reviewing appointment of John's seat, which is up for renewal, or his term expires this month. John reapplied. There was one other applicant, so that'll be considered by the council along with appointments to other committees. If I'm not mistaken, a couple of the committees don't have enough volunteer applicants, and so
So for the record, we're oversubscribed, and we have others that are undersubscribed.
yeah, so there has been occasion where the council has encouraged new interested parties to participate on other committees that need the support. The other item that the mayor asked a dialogue to get started on was regarding the rail committee and whether it should be a full town committee or a town supported committee, relieving the committee of Brown Act issues and other items, allowing members to freely talk about the various things related to rail, bring stuff to staff, etc. My understanding of that is it's an idea that the mayor had. It'll be brought up for a brief discussion, but likely if it goes anywhere, it'll likely be deferred down or referred down to the rail committee for conversation.
You mean you come back to us
Yeah.
for a conversation?
To get feedback.
Oh,
and
okay.
opinions and thoughts and
Okay.
and that kind of
I
thing.
didn't quite understand that. What is the mayor trying to?
I think he's thinking to initiate a dialogue more than anything else. As you all know, the rail issues facing the town have changed quite a bit over the last few years, particularly with the MOU that we have with Caltrain, their support of the Watkins crossing, the quiet zone extension, and with the closure of the station, our issues with Caltrain have kind of dropped quite a bit. And then, so it just basically leaves high-speed rail, and the litigation efforts related to high-speed rail now are done. Not to say that there isn't a lot of interface between the town and rail that comes through here, but in terms of policy issues and feedback, now that the EIR is done, things are maybe winding down a little bit. So it's, like I said, it's going to be an opportunity for him to, I'm going to say, I'm guessing, but I'm thinking he's going to have an opportunity to bring up his thoughts. And then if it goes anywhere, it'll likely come down here.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and you say if it becomes a town-supported committee instead of a full town committee, one thing is it sort of eliminates the Brown Act requirements. I mean, that sounds like a good thing to me. Is there any downside to being town-supported versus full?
Less formal, well, maybe not less formal recognition, I would say. You won't have regular meetings necessarily anymore because, it'll be probably more ad hoc. So it's kind of like how the tree committee right now for Atherton, it's kind of a lower profile committee. It's less formal, less official, but they could still do their work, probably less staff support. But if we have,
There's the downside, right?
yeah, that is the downside, yeah.
Well, the downside is that, and also communication with the council.
Yeah.
As an ad hoc committee, we wouldn't have the stature with them that we have now.
That's right. We would lose Bob as an important resource in our committee. We would lose you as an important resource for our committee because we wouldn't have a liaison anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, so I said it's.
The question he has in mind is,
Yeah.
If it is, the function has room for.
Yeah.
It's on this agenda.
Yeah, and so I said, it's just an initiation of that thought process,
Mhm.
but it's my understanding that if it goes anywhere, it'll come down here for discussion. And so that'll be likely on, I'll find
August.
out whether or not it'll be on a future agenda. And let
Wait.
Paul know.
So, this won't be like the final committee meeting.
No.
We won't like show up in August and like, sorry, been disbanded. Oh, okay. Okay, are there any other staff or committee member comments? And then public comment, I don't see anyone from the public on. So we will move on to next meeting. National Night Out is going to push us a week away.
Yeah, so my understanding, National Night Out is planned for August 2nd, which is our normal meeting date in August. We haven't had this conflict in a little while, but it's something that we've had as a regular conflict in the past. In the past, we've just basically moved that meeting out by a week. And so it's up to the committee to choose when you think you'd like to have the next meeting. It will be like this one, a special meeting.
Mhm.
And so we will post the cancellation notice in advance of the August 2nd meeting, and then the agenda would be posted just following the August 2nd date.
Okay, August 9th.
If
Oh, go ahead,
my,
Paul.
if my memory is right, we voted to move the August meeting to the second Tuesday just because of this, so that it wouldn't have to come up as a special meeting and make a fuss about it every year. Did that get buried or lost, or what happened to that?
I think the official calendar is still the first Tuesday of the month,
Oh, so
or the first Tuesday of every even month.
whatever
Sorry.
we had no impact.
Well, I'm going to say that our agenda is pretty constant, or has been pretty constant in terms of the items that we talk about. There's not really been, in my recollection, any special items that, come up that make a special meeting different than
Mhm.
a regular meeting. We try and cover all the things that we need to cover. And so just because it's on it'll be on that alternate date, whatever date you all vote to have it on. but we will endeavor to put all of the needed items on our agenda that we need to cover at that meeting.
I will say special meetings tend to be less attended by the public because it's kind of out of the typical schedule that they don't always know it ahead of time. Okay, any other comments? So I propose August 9th for us to reschedule 1 week after it'll be the second Tuesday.
Fine by me.
Okay,
The ninth?
the 9th, yeah.
Okay, so I'll put Alex down as the motion and
Oh, yeah.
Jim as the,
Second. Do we have to vote on it or
I'd like one.
by unanimous consent? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right,
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Okay, we're adjourned.
Done. All good.
Yeah, half an hour.